here. Okay, guys. Anyway, so yeah, great post, Blake, this week on LinkedIn on the amount of preparation time that it takes to do different foods. And you know what's funny is about 15 years ago, maybe even a little more, within the food industry, even the companies that I was working at, even the marketing people said one of the reasons we were making money was because people stopped preparing foods. Many people even joked around that people didn't even remember how to boil water without a microwave. Right? Yeah. So this has been something big as far as topics within my realm for a long time. But one thing to consider too is I think I replied in your post, a lot of the millennial affordable apartments and kitchens, particularly like New York City, were redesigned to compact and squeeze people in to be almost like upscaled versions of hostels, right? Where you had a half galley kitchen, just enough to get past zoning. And you have a really tiny shower, sometimes barely able to move in those showers, right? And I think 200 square feet, 180 square feet were some of the apartments that were listed as affordable, even though they were over $1,000 a month in New York City. And this is going way back. So there really isn't room to cook. They literally have to put a table out after they put the bed away and move the couch against the wall in order to chop, right? Chop vegetables or whatever, unless they're able to buy prepared foods at a place like Fairway, or now there's Whole Foods in New York, or, whatnot. It was assumed that they would go out to eat. So prep time and this new idea of eating only whole foods, we should talk about that, because the last time we met, it was right before the new guidelines, right? And I have my few issues with it, being that it insinuates, and I love all the points that Blake's put on his social media about it, because my problem was it insinuates from a left to right reading, a visual for the Western societies, how we read English or Latin or whatever. You see the butter and the steak and the pork first with the whole milk. Then you see the vegetables and the fruits, but then you see the beans and greens are like dwindling down to the bottom. Like you're not supposed to have any of it. And like I said, to you, Blake, what you pointed out, I started to see, it's in the shape of a pizza pie. And at the very bottom of the pie, you're allowed this many cereals and grains. Except cereals and grains have all these minerals and proven phenols and unique fibers and prebiotics that you can't get in other foods necessarily. So there is a need for them. And beans are a great source of protein, but they're kind of nudging it downward. And the beans don't even look like beans. So your comments.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. Somebody turned the triangle, rotated it this way. And so the vegetables were on the left. And then suddenly it looked like, now it makes a little more sense. Yeah. New dietary guidelines were interesting, and, an incredible amount of discussion, especially on LinkedIn, that I saw on so many different viewpoints. And, I saw one that said, hey, if you took the triangle and rotated it left one way, it suddenly looks different and better, because now the vegetables and fruits are on the left side, and then people are reading from left to right. So and he actually did it. I'm like, wow, it suddenly looks better, even though it's the same exact thing. So yeah, it just goes to show like how you represent things in images really matters. And it can't just be, kind of arbitrary about how we represent, the visual imagery of what we eat.
Yep. Dave, your thoughts?
I'll take the dissenting view here. I loved the new platform. What I mean by that is I think that it's a good starting place for a conversation that's long overdue, and that talks about very specifically food systems and things that potentially would have received GRAS status in the past, so generally regarded as safe. But I think some of those things probably need a competent reevaluation. I also think that this is far more complex than anybody is ever going to realize. You're going to have regional effectiveness and regional non-effectiveness of these diets based on people's microbiomes, their culture, where they come from, what their pre-existing socioeconomic status is, and what, Blake, you talked about in your recent LinkedIn post. Do they have the skills, the ability, and the willingness to actually prepare food? Do they have a competent skill set? Do they have a bucket of time in which to do it? And then when they actually do it, is the food actually going to be delicious so that they can keep being involved in this process?